Hello, Laziali all over the world. Welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. I'm Vittorio Campanile. With me, Alistair McKenzie. Plenty of things to talk about. We have to talk about Inter Lazio. But first, a big thank you to David Ibrahim, the new Patreon of Lazio Lounge. Remember, guys, you can support the podcast on patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Memberships starts at just $2 a month. And then if you want to try our merchandising on laziolounge.storeny.com, you can find our lovely merchandising. Part of that money goes to us, especially to buy that expensive golden microphone of Alistair McKenzie. A lot of things to talk about. I mean, most worrying thing is this time for Lazio defeat, I cannot blame you, Alistair, right? You weren't at San Siro.
I did see that was your first kind of hot take of the evening was being annoyed that you couldn't blame me. Yeah, I know you couldn't. I was sitting at home, Vittorio. My TV has broken, so I was having to watch it off my semi-broken laptop. So the whole thing was a bit of a disaster. I had a little bit of a hangover as well. So all of these things rolled into one. Made it a pretty miserable evening.
I can imagine. I really can imagine. And we have to say that we said in the past that Inzaghis is very good to prepare a match when he has 5 days, a full week to prepare it. But I think that his preparation was definitely affected by Radu, that was put in the starting 11 and then was pulled out during the warm-up 10 minutes before the match. Do you agree with me that this affected Simone Inzaghi preparation for the match?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to talk about around that, though, because I think that his decision-making throughout the game defensively was absolutely bizarre, really. Yes, Radu pulled out during the warm-up, which isn't great, but he'd said 2 days before that Radu didn't look like he was in a condition to play in the first place. So surely they understood that there was a risk, even if Radu wasn't going to necessarily pull out in the warm-up, that he wouldn't last 90 minutes. I think Inzaghi also said that, they practiced all week with Acerbi being in the middle to take care of Lukaku, but then, and so that affected them, but he wanted a left footer on the left, so he therefore had to move Acerbi to the left, and I just think that's absolutely bizarre. I think you're taking care of Lukaku has to be your first objective defensively when you're up against a team like Inter. Musacchio not being near the starting lineup was strange. It was even stranger when Hope was taken off because of Inzaghi's fear of yellow cards, that Marco Parolo was the one who came on. I mean, the whole thing, Vittorio, I think it's easy to say in retrospect, but I feel like when you're up against the league's best attack, it's not necessarily in retrospect to say maybe you don't want a back three with Marco Parolo and Patrick as two of the three.
Definitely. I think we have to talk about Musacchio because you sign him because there's obviously some problems there with the Luis Felipe out. And then in a very important match, you start Patrick. I think that's fine. But then you make the substitution and you bring in Parolo, not Musacchio. That, for me, raise some concern. Is it because he doesn't trust Musacchio to be the central in the three-man defense and he thinks Musacchio can only play on the right side? Well, especially in the Lazio defense where you don't have that many options, that would be very silly for me. I mean, why do you sign a player that can play only in one position, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's because he's not been tested there, isn't it? So it doesn't want to throw him into an unknown position. But then, Marco Parolo, that argument goes out the window a bit when you select Marco Parolo there. I understand. I wasn't that surprised when Wesley Hope was the man who was drafted from the starting lineup, because Lazio used that defence or versions of it in the Champions League most of the season, and that's gone fairly well. Hope in the middle, Acerbi on the left, choose someone on the right. Okay, fine. But I just don't think on today yesterday of all days, that Inzaghi needed to be quite that. I'm trying to find the right word for the way he behaves around players on yellow cards, but like, just you don't have to take him off at half time because he's on a yellow card. I thought Wesley Hope wasn't actually having a very bad game, and he looked quite in control. The yellow card he got was for the penalty, which we'll get onto. So I just didn't feel like we were necessarily in a position where he needed to make a change that, by bringing on Marco Parolo, just completely transforms and gives an imbalance to that defence. And obviously, look, the rest of the team didn't function well either, but that was the strangest part of all of it, was that defensive selection.
And Alistair, it's not the first time, I think it's the second time that he brings the players in, and then before the whistle, he subs them. So you had all the break to make the substitution, and both Leiva and Hood come in the pitch, and then he said, no, come out, you're in the bench. I mean, that's humiliating in some way. I mean, you had 15 minutes to make this call, and then you do it 2 seconds before the second half starts. I mean, what happened there? Miscommunication? You didn't have time to think about it, or you wanted to wait something, I don't know, wanted to see if Inter was making a change? I really don't understand. I was shocked because everybody knows Inzaghi. I thought everybody who's listening to this podcast when Hurt got the yellow card said, okay, he's not coming back in the second half. So when I saw him coming in, I said, wow, Inzaghi's changing. And then he pulled him off. I thought, no, not very good.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like Inzaghi probably kind of felt like he never quite had control of this game, and we've got used to in this 6-match winning run that Lazio have generally been in good position in most of those games, or at least on the front foot, and they were in this one as well. There's definitely a sense, something Inzaghi doesn't deal too well with is when he feels like the world's going against him. We've seen that in the past, and last night it was hard not to feel that way because we need to have the penalty discussion because I keep saying we'll get onto the penalty, but there was that, whatever your feelings are about it. Then there was the second goal, which just came out of a lucky deflection, and Lazio, had 65% possession and were really the only team who turned up to play football. But at the same time, Conte set up to play Inzaghi at his own game, and it worked. So you can't really criticise Conte or Inter's approach because it worked. They won the game 3-1. They had the better chances. They allowed Lazio to attack them because they'd probably seen Cagliari last week and said, well, let them come and see what they can do. And Lazio couldn't get through. They couldn't create the chances.
Okay, let's talk about the penalty because I have plenty of things to talk after that. Was it a penalty, Alistair?
Yes, I think so.
I have to say that showing it in real time, it never looked a penalty. And then on the replay, you can see that the left foot of Hut, so not the one that is extending, going to take the ball, which I think he touches, hit the foot of Lautaro. So unfortunately, I have to agree it's a penalty. I know a lot of Lazio fans blame Hut about that. But I think it's all the Lazio defense is out of position. In particularly, Patrick, where the hell are you going? Every Lazio player had to move back. And again, Hurt should have been marking Lukaku, which in that situation is marked by Acerbi. And Hurt had to move to Lautaro Martinez, who is much faster than Hurt. And that's where the problem started. So I think it was a penalty. A lot of people blame Hurt, and again, I repeat, it's Patrick's fault. Too often, we see Patrick, how can I say, not thinking about what he's doing on the pitch, just watching the ball, forgetting about the position he has to take, and this have consequence.
Yeah, I mean... I feel like my instinct on the Hut challenge was very different to seemingly everyone else's at the time. As soon as he did it, I thought that's a penalty. it was only after I saw the first replays I thought, oh, hang on a second, maybe that's not a penalty. And then I had to come all the way back around again and say, that is a penalty. And yeah, look, he's unlucky in the sense that he's inches away from that being, the flying Hoet slide tackle of all flying Hoet slide tackles. And we've mentioned this before on the podcast that we're big fans of when Big Wesley launches off his feet and gets it right. But this has been coming, Vittorio, this moment where he decides to do it, in my opinion, at the wrong moment. I don't think he needed to take that risk. The reason I thought it was a penalty immediately is because if you're running side by side or behind a player in the box and you go off your feet, no matter what contact you make with the ball, you're always giving the referee a decision to make. And I feel like it was an unnecessary risk for him to take because Lautaro Martinez needs about 10 shots to score a goal in the first place. If you let him through on goal and have him one-on-one with Reina, I'd rather take that chance than take the chance of Hoet getting that ball cleanly. So I just, even though he was a bit unlucky with it, I feel like it was the wrong decision by him to go in like that.
Well, probably he didn't see the stats of Lautaro Martinez shooting. The other thing we have to say that Lazio was very unlucky because the second goal, I thought, well, this will never stand. This is going to be offside all the way. And instead, it's simply unbelievable. Lukaku was onside. And it's simply one of those nights, right, where everything goes the wrong way.
Yeah, and I feel like on these nights, when you're playing, one of the top team in Italy, top team in the league, you need those moments to go your way. And this is why, and look, we've had a hell of a lot of responses from people on Twitter since last night. And, I don't think we're going to get through all of it, but we're going to try and address a lot of the talking points people bring up. But, opinions are a little bit split on kind of how we judge this performance. And my take on it, Vittorio, is that I think that there's been a bit of an overreaction to it. I think Lazio, Inzaghi got things wrong. I think he got out-coached a bit by Conte. I think that Inter's approach worked, even though they didn't like it. But at the same time, I think Lazio's level of performance was still good. They still played their own way. They still played with a good amount of confidence, maybe not in defence. And it doesn't worry me that much as a performance. Going into a Sampdoria game, it's quite obvious when you see a Lazio side that loses a game, that has lost their identity or that is exhausted or that has run out of ideas. And last night, I feel like Lazio just, the individual moments in the match didn't go their way. They didn't have much of an answer to it, but I don't feel like it's a performance that's worthy of immense criticism.
Well, before that, we have to be honest and say Inter was built for fight for the Scudetto till the end, right? Lazio was built to reach the Champions League qualification. So two teams with different goal. I mean, people say about Lautaro Martinez, Varela, etc. Varela cost like the last two transfer markets of Lazio. Let's not forget about that. So, fighting
He's
at the same level.
60,000 Wesley Hooks.
Yeah, Lukaku cost like all Lazio starting players, right? 68 million euros. Come on. And they have Alexis Sanchez on the bench that has the salary of Luis Alberto, Milinkovic-Savic all together. So, people forget about this. One team was built to win the Scudetto, and I think they are favorite now to win it. And Lazio was built to reach a Champions League qualification. So this is something everybody has to keep in mind. And a lot of fans was writing me last week saying, hey, Vittorio, we beat Inter. We're going to win the Scudetto. And I was saying, guys, relax. We are not even fourth. Imagine if we can win the Scudetto beating Inter. So I think the sixth win in a row get someone a little bit overexcited. The The other thing, Alistair, and you pointed out a little bit at the beginning, I thought Lazio played too optimistic. I think Lazio had to play like Inter did. Wait Inter and then attack them, because Ciro Immobile and Correa are very dangerous when they have space behind them. Same thing with Lazzari and Marusic. If you can launch the ball and see them running on the wingers, they can be very difficult to stop. Instead, we played, I don't want to say that we were too presumptuous or, convinced that we can beat Inter easily like we did against Atalanta and Roma. But yeah, maybe, playing away against Inter, you should play more a counter-attack type of football that suit better Lazio, in my way. So I think we lost it even for this, because we were too convinced to outplay Inter.
Yeah, but I mean, it's no coincidence, is it? I mean, Conte will have looked at Lazio's performances in big games this season and seen the way that they took apart Roma, for example, who had the wrong approach to the game. And, it's a weird one, because Lazio and Inter play in quite similar styles, similar setups, and especially when he selected Eriksen and Varela in midfield, you kind of have these both teams with two kind of central midfielders who are more creative and then very attack-minded wingers. And it was kind of surprising I thought, the selection that Conte made wasn't, by his standards, was quite aggressive. It wasn't a very conservative selection, actually picking Perisic for once, which doesn't happen very often, Christian Eriksen in midfield, which doesn't happen very often, and avoiding guys like Darmian or Gagliardini or the workhorses he usually prefers. So from that selection, I expected a different approach than what they had, where they're sitting so deep. But I think it's probably all part of the plan. And like I said at the start, I just feel like Inzaghi was kind of knocked off course quite early on. Losing Radu, losing the penalty, losing the goal, and I don't feel like he had that calmness maybe to be able to really step back and take a non-emotional look at how things were going and try and work out a response. I think from the start he felt like things were going against him. And they were, to a certain extent, because there was a lot of bad luck involved in that game.
But on the other side, we have to say that Varela and Hakimi, that have been in the last month the most dangerous players of Inter, didn't do nothing against Lazio. So that was somehow surprising, because, those are the most dangerous players of Inter and they didn't show up pretty much. Lazio was very good in neutralizing them. One thing is, I got the impression that Milinkovic Savic was really tired. He didn't play very well, but he's the only starter that played all the last, 7-8 match for Lazio. So it makes sense that Milinkovic Savic could be a little bit tired, and especially in a match where he has to make the difference. You could see it, or at least I notice it.
Yeah, I think you just needed the big game players to step up to kind of get Lazio out of that funk and get them back into the game. And yeah, whether it was Luis Alberto or Ciro Immobile as well, and Milinkovic Savic, I mean, they're always the ones that you're looking for to do that. I didn't feel like the front two really offered anything. Correa and Immobile had a really difficult evening, and eventually they were both replaced, but it was a bit too late by then.
This is a question I wanted to ask you, because finally, I would say, we have a plan B there in front, right? Because last year we had to rely 100% on Ciro Immobile. He was the one that could decide the matches. Now you have Murici. I'm not saying Murici is at the same level of Ciro Immobile, but in particular in this type of matches where the other team sit back and doesn't offer space for Ciro Immobile to run, which is his number one ability. Do you think Inzaghi waited too long? I mean, you finished the first half down 2-0. instead of taking off Leiva, you could risk and take off maybe Correa for the start and put Murici. And so you had 45 minutes to try to put the ball in the box for Murici's header. Or do you think he's not ready and it would be too big risk?
No, I think he's ready. Absolutely. I think he's shown enough in the last month or so to say that he has a place in this team now. But yeah, I mean, it did make me kind of sigh a bit at half time when you're 2-0 down, you're away, you're at the best team in the league, and you bring on Marco Parolo and Gonzalo Escalante to change the game. And I thought, come on. I mean, unless this is a tactical masterstroke, and well, Escalante obviously ends up kind of thrusting the ball into the net. It was an interesting finish. I think they've taken the goal off him now.
Yeah, Milinkovic-Savic scored.
Which is a shame for him. It would have been an entertaining way to score your first goal. But yeah, I mean, so it's not like I thought Escalante had a terrible game. I'm not saying that. It's just that, yeah, I feel like you need to have more options. You know, Andres Pereira, for example, is always someone who's shown he's had that kind of energy and he looks like he's quite motivated when he comes off the bench. And if you give him that time and that faith in a big match like that against Inter, then you know at least that he's going to be hungry enough to try and do something. And whether it's him, Murici, or Caicedo, obviously, it's difficult because it's the squad depth issue all over again, isn't it? Because there's only so much you can do, really. Because then you look at Inter's bench and they bring on Alexis Sanchez or Stefano Sensi, or whoever it is. It's just like you said already at the start, with how many Wesley Hoyts does Nicolo Varela cost? But I mean, it is a big difference. And when people, going right back to Wesley Hoyt again, this is the trade-off. This is the compromise that you have to make, and we've seen it in the last month. I've said this the whole time. Wesley Hoyt is a cheap option. What that means is that, okay, you're managing to bring in a defender with experience and familiarity of the league and everything, and he's not going to cost you much. But he will lose you games. He will. We know that. That's not a surprise to us because he's played for us before. And he's done it against Atalanta in the Cup. We're out of the Cup essentially because of a terrible game from him. And he's cost us, not the game, I'm not going to put it all on him, but he's put in a bad performance that's cost us in this match as well. But I don't blame him for that. It's just, it is what it is. If you bring in a certain caliber of player, you should expect a certain caliber of performance. And Lazio they don't really have the right to expect to be, competing with the full squad of Inter if they're not going to invest in a competitive way.
Well, again, unfortunately, Lazio had Luis Felipe and Radu out, two starters of Lazio defense. And against Inter, that's going to make a big difference. So that's obviously where Lazio cannot compete with the other teams. I mean, Juventus had De Ligt out for I don't remember how long, but they have Chiellini and Bonucci. Now Bonucci's out, but they have De Ligt coming in. Unfortunately, Lazio cannot compete at that level. And we saw it. Again, teams built for the Scudetto, teams built for the Champions League. That's the biggest difference. And that's why it's really important for Lazio to reach the Champions League again, because that will bring more money. And hopefully this summer we'll invest it in young, good defenders, because Radu missed today. He's not getting younger. It's not the first time Radu's out. Luis Felipe, it's probably one of the best defenders we have, but I don't know how many matches he missed in the last 2 months or so. So I think that there's a double problem. Injury, we have too many injury-prone defenders, and quality, because Inter has a much better defense than Lazio. It's not a coincidence. Inter is the best defense, and Lazio of the top 7 at the moment is the team that allowed more goal, right? So this is something that can be explained like that. So.
Yeah, and Inzaghi said before the game that qualifying for the Champions League would be our Scudetto. And
sorry, Roma has the worst defense. We have 30 goals and Roma 35, but Roma scored 47, 10 more than us. So,
yeah, and that the attack hasn't really been firing this season. It's not. I can't remember where we are in the overall standings in terms of goals scored, but it's not particularly impressive.
But we are the last, even there. We are the last team for goal scores in the top 7. But, and this is where I want to ask you. Last match Lazio didn't score is against Sampdoria when we lost 3-0. After that, Lazio scored every single match. So I'm asking you, it's better to have, like Roma that scored 10 goals more, but it's like 3 points ahead of Lazio, or being like Lazio that scored less, but one goal there, instead of being Udinese 3-0 and then being goalless in the derby and things like that. So that's a big difference. So,
well, I mean, the Roma example is it's such a clear trend in their season where they're struggling a lot in the big matches, and we talked about that. And Fonseca's record over 2 seasons in big games is terrible, but Lazio could learn a lot from the way that they dispatch the smaller teams, because it's just looking so easy for them, whether it's Udinese on Sunday or whoever it is. They are managing to find a way of knocking those smaller teams aside. And, Lazio have obviously beaten a lot of smaller teams recently, but, 1-0 against Cagliari or, 2-0 against Parma, a terrible Parma team. So I think it's kind of finding a happy medium. I'm not that concerned in that, like you say, it's not like Lazio are going lots of games without managing to find the net or anything like that. But there was a time when Lazio were free scoring last season and a couple of seasons before, and that was a big characteristic of this team. And I don't think it is a characteristic of the team anymore, is that they're absolutely kind of free flowing in attack.
Alistair, Saturday, 3:00, there's Lazio Sampdoria. I am a little bit concerned about this match. One, because we remember what happened last time Lazio played Champions League against a big team. It was against Sampdoria again, and Lazio played probably the worst match of the season. Can we say that? And second, because maybe you can go to the match and that will prove that Lazio could lose badly again. And it could be a very important week, because there's that small derby in Milan. There's Atalanta-Napoli that for me could be really, really important for our chances of the Champions League. There's Sassuolo-Bologna, so if Lazio beats Sampdoria on Saturday, we can be back there on the 4th position, or, recover points to Napoli and Atalanta. So I hope the focus of Lazio players will be for the Sampdoria match and not already for the Champions League one that's coming later. Yeah, me too. I mean, it's going to be hard for them not to get distracted, because that is, for all of them, it's a huge moment. It's a huge moment in all their careers, because so many of these players haven't got that Champions League experience, especially knockout stage. But like you say, I mean, Serie A wise, it has the potential to be a massive weekend again. I mean, just for what winning that game could mean for Lazio's position in the table, I don't think they can afford to slip up. The thing that worries me the most is that Claudio Ranieri, I don't have any stats to back me up on this, but it just feels like he's one of those coaches that always has quite a good time against Lazio. And he kind of knows how to set up teams to do exactly what Lazio have struggled against recently, which is to set up, to soak up pressure, to defend, to hit on the counter, to essentially do what Cagliari did a couple of weeks ago.
but they've got a lot more. Well, they're in better form, and they've got some good quality in that side compared to Cagliari. So I'm a bit worried that that's exactly what's going to happen. Is it'll be almost an identical match to Cagliari all over again, and we're going to have to try and find a way through.
Yes, Sampdoria's 10th, just 3 positions behind the Lazio. They're not playing great football, but they're very tough to beat. So that scares me. And I don't know if you saw Keita. I can see him scoring against us, definitely, with the assist from Candreva, right? Yeah. So I think, to be honest, it's going to be a bigger test for Lazio than Inter, because you can lose against Inter. And, it's easy to play well against Inter because you want to prove that you are at that level. Against Sampdoria, with Bayern Munich coming later, I don't know. It's going to be a big test to prove if our players are elite players that are able to focus really on the next match. We hear it every time. What's the biggest important match you're playing? It's the next one. You're not thinking about the Champions League. No, we're just thinking of Sampdoria. So now they have to prove it. Because, as I said before, winning that match will be really, really important, because you can pass Atalanta and Napoli. So,
yeah, and look, I think as well, this run, I'm just looking at the fixtures here, it's up to the where is it, 21st of April. So I think that this period, the next 2 months, is going to decide. I mean, it sounds quite obvious, but it's going to really decide if Lazio get to the Champions League or not, is how they dispatch the small teams in this run, because they've got the distraction of the 2 Champions League games, possibly a 3rd and 4th. Let's not rule it out. But other than that, Juventus on the 6th of March is the only big team Lazio have got to play. Otherwise, they've got Sampdoria, Bologna, Torino, Crotone, Udinese, Spezia, Verona, Benevento. That is a run of fixtures. That is.
Don't say it.
But that's huge. That's what Lazio messed up the first half of the season. That's where it all went wrong.
That's why I'm saying it. We remember saying, the next 5 matches, Lazio can win them all. 15 points, come on, etc. How many did we win? 2. It's true. Champions League shouldn't be there. So that's the biggest difference compared to the first part of the season. But we've been saying for the last month, Lazio is playing great football against great team and struggling against small teams. So that's my biggest fear. Said that, before we wrap it up, because we're going a little bit too far, are you expecting Murici, Pereira to start against Sampdoria? I think it's a great chance to rest Ciro Immobile, Milinkovic-Savic and so on, but at the same time to give chances to these players that every time they prove to be good players, to play in an important match, because as we said, Lazio has to win this.
Yeah, I do think it would be a good moment to do that, but I don't think it will happen. Same old answer, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. Maybe Inzaghi change, and I mean Murici has proved that he can play and have scored when he started. So maybe Inzaghi give him a chance. I was surprised to see Pereira coming in instead of Luis Alberto, instead of playing close to Ciro Immobile. So maybe that's a change we're gonna see in the coming matches or so. Alistair, it looks like someone is texting you, so I'm gonna leave you there. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. Again, thanks for your support. We are really happy to find new Lazio fans all over the world, from Australia to Lazio Club Toronto. We are here. Thanks for your support. We're trying to do the best. Again, thanks for your support. Remember, we are on Patreon, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Memberships $2 a month. You can find our podcast everywhere. Spotify, Spreaker, iTunes, Alexa app, everywhere. So if you're a Lazio fan, or you simply want to know everything about Lazio, you know where to find us. And we're going to talk after Sampdoria Lazio. Thank you again, Alistair. Lazio Sampdoria. Thank you again, Alistair. Good night. And now you can reply to the text message.
Cheers.